This is a guide that you should follow to get every single RC question correct. Most prep companies and tutors will tell you some variety of the idea that you just can't improve at RC. It has to do with your natural instincts and talents. It was built in you from when you were a wee lad, and so now all you can do is just kind of try to do your best and mitigate your weaknesses. They even go so far to say that most students that are struggling with RC probably won't see much improvement, so focus on LR. That is a total fabrication. I went from having the most difficulty with RC, often scoring anywhere from -10 to -8 on every single section, to consistently scoring -1 to -0. You can and will improve at RC with the right strategies and approach, which is exactly what I'm here today to teach to you. It's actually so simple that when most students start following the right approach, they start to see improvement immediately. The reason why is that in some ways, the prep companies and tutors were right. You probably were taught the wrong way to read for the LSAT. But the nice thing is, you can learn to read it the right way. And fret not, I'm here to teach you. But who am I? Hey, I'm Daniel. I founded LSAT Defenders to bring affordable LSAT coaching to students like you to help achieve their LSAT goals and law school admission dreams. I was accepted into Harvard Law, scored in the 99th percentile on the LSAT, and now I've helped numerous students, hundreds of students, improve their scores 5, 10, 15, 20, and even more points. So let's help you get the same. Also, if you're interested, I made a 44-page LSAT guide that covers every single topic, and it's 100% totally free. I made it for students that are just beginning their LSAT journey, and also students who are hardened LSAT veterans and really just want a little bit of a boost. So if you're interested in that, all you have to do is click the link in the description below, and I will send you a totally free copy. Okay, here's the foundational principle you need to understand to master RC. It's the idea of reading with a purpose. Students often get distracted when they read RC. One of the most common things students will tell me is that it's boring, the passages aren't interesting, they're long, they're dense, and they're not very well written. And so why, of course, would you be very interested in reading a passage you don't care about? Not to mention, in school, you're taught to read every single sentence, sometimes even speed read, to get through a text, synthesize it, and sort of make your own formulations about what it means to you. Those two factors are the death of every single LSAT student's RC progress. So we need to figure out a way to combat those sort of internal mechanisms, which is why the foundational principle is to read with a purpose. And there's multiple elements to that. Here are some hard LSAT truths. The LSAT does not care about your interpretation of the passage. It only cares about, do you understand what it's literally saying, and can you answer questions about it using that as evidence? And as for length and difficulty, we're going to deal with how to stay more engaged, but remember, an RC passage is 20 lines on average. That's it. It feels really dense when you're reading it, but in actuality, it's really short. And so when you keep that in mind, that's another way to just stay engaged, but we're going to talk about more ways to do that as well. So instead, we read with a purpose. And an easy way to understand how to read with a purpose is by the common analogy, the forest and the trees. Right? People will often say when you're watching a movie, reading a book, looking at a piece of art, that you shouldn't miss the forest for the trees. You shouldn't miss the bigger picture for the small details. On the LSAT, you kind of have to do both. Thankfully, there's a strategy you can use, the exact approach, so that you can get the forest and the trees. And it has to do with two levels of analysis, a macro level and a micro level. Macro being the forest, micro being the trees. Let's focus on the macro first. Remember when we talked about how it feels often difficult to stay engaged in a passage? Well, the macro portion of this approach is meant to combat that. Instead of reading just to read and understand, I now want you to read with a purpose, and that purpose is to answer 3 questions. The first question is, what is the author's perspective? So if you're to read the passage as a whole, I want you to think to yourself while you're reading, is the author positive about what they're writing? Are they negative? Are they neutral? Do they not really care? Are they engaged? All of those emotional responses that it seems like the author is giving off is what I want you to note and think about. The second question I want you to ask yourself is, what is the main point? So if you just summarize the passage as a whole and you're to take it down to just 1 or 2 sentences, what would you say? Finally, the third question is, what is the argument structure? So commonly on RC, you're going to have maybe 3 to 5 paragraphs, and each paragraph plays a role. So let's say the first paragraph is an introduction, the second paragraph introduces someone else's argument, and the third paragraph sort of synthesizes the two. It doesn't matter what it is, but I want you to pay attention and ask yourself, how do each of the paragraphs relate to one another? If you're able to do that and answer those 3 questions, you're going to have a much better picture of the forest and the overall themes and structure of the passage. But of course, we don't just want to get the forest, we want the trees, which is why we have the micro level of analysis. All that means is when you're reading, you want to do a few things. Just like if you watch my previous video on how to execute an approach for every single LR question, you want to read similarly on RC. Yes, it's longer, but it's the same approach. You're reading to understand. And so the main strategy we're going to use is connecting sentences. I want you to break down each sentence into pieces. If you can understand the sentence as a whole, that's great. But sometimes you need to split it up by half sentences, sometimes by phrases, sometimes by words. It only matters that you understand each word in the sentence and the sentence as a whole. What does it mean, right? That's what the micro is focused on. And I want you to do this for every single sentence, right? It doesn't stop just because you finish the first sentence. You track the second and the third and the fourth, and you think about how all of them mean individually, and then what do they mean as a group. It's sort of like painting a picture, right? You want to paint each element together. And to be able to have a really good understanding of RC passages, you need to be able to do that. And the way you start that is word by word. If you follow those steps at the macro and micro level analysis, your understanding of RC is going to be so much better than it might be right now. And it's a very simple fix. Remember, it's the 3 questions for macro, and it's connecting the sentences for micro. Now, you're ready for the answer choices. So, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you high and dry. We have a strategy and approach for that as well. It's called treating it like it must be true. If you harken back to what I said at the beginning of this video, RC doesn't care about what you think. It doesn't care if you think you understand what the author would agree with. If you think if the author used this sentence for this reason, maybe it was because of this. Your interpretation is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is what the evidence or the passage actually tells you. And so every question that you're answering on RC, don't think about your own interpretation. Think about what of these answer choices is actually supported by the passage that I just read. There's 2 benefits of this mindset. 1, you have all of the evidence and proof you need to get every single question right. If you're ever unsure, you literally have the proof just a few inches on the screen to the left. 2, it's simple-minded. You don't need to be some reading genius to be able to get RC questions correct. You just do the hard work of breaking it down and then go back to the stimulus and the passage if you ever need to refresh your mind and then get the question right. There is one question I want you to just ingrain in your head every single time you're doing an RC passage, which is, where is the evidence? If you're trying to pick an answer choice and it is contradicted by something in the passage, it's wrong. If you're trying to pick an answer choice and there's no support for it in the passage and you ask yourself, where is the evidence? And there's no evidence, it's incorrect. If you use that frame of mind, your accuracy will go through the roof. Here's some final tips for RC. Don't read fast. That is the death of understanding. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. The only way you're going to be able to get better, do more passages, get more questions right, is if you do the hard work in the beginning, build up your strengths and talents until you can master that strategy and overall become a better RC test taker. And on that point, don't focus on getting every single question right at the start, right? For now, your goal should be to just get the first passage 100% correct, right? If there's 4 passages in a section, and your accuracy is 50, 60, 70%, obviously you're doing something wrong. Focus on getting the first passage right. And then when you can do that consistently, get the second passage right, and so on and so forth. That way, you're focused on solving the questions, not just reading as much as you can. Also, remember, when you're rushing to get to the last passage, it's typically harder. They normally have the hardest passage at the end. Why rush to harder questions when you could stay on the passages that are easier, get those confirmed points, and then as you get better, move on. Finally, focus on understanding. It's never going to lead you astray. If there's one lesson you can take away from the LSAT, is that they just want you to understand something and answer a question about it. If you get really good at understanding something, which is the whole basis of this approach, you're going to be really good at answering questions too. So, if you're interested in more strategies like we covered today, as well as engaging in concepts that are going to help you boost your score, click that link in my bio below to get $19 an hour LSAT coaching today. Also, we're working on currently building out one-on-one tutoring. And if you're interested in that, again, use that form in my description that is going to allow you to reserve your spot. We've already had a good number of students express interest, so we want to make sure that if you're interested in one-on-one tutoring, we can get you a tutor. And leave a comment. If you enjoyed today's video and would like to see more content like it, or different types of content, let me know. I'd be more than happy to make it. And as always, don't get robbed, get and keep what's yours.